What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Big Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. Sometimes daily. I guess it's daily now. It's just force of habit after 5 years of saying that. I'm Will Brinson, joined by Brady Quinn and Douzable. Always fun to have a Tuesdays with Brady. What's up? Pew, 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 pew.
We'll do it one more time. Run that hand through your hair, buddy. The majestic hair you've got.
You know what I'm saying? You might look one of
Look at
these.
that. Yeah, there it is.
It's being a little extra poofy today. I didn't really do anything to it other than just kind of like toss it to the side. I'll do a couple frat swoops for you during the show, though. Don't worry.
You look like you could play bass in a 90s rock band with that hair. That's what you look like right now.
It's getting a little long. It's a little long. I'm gonna see if I can go till the Super Bowl without getting it cut. We'll see.
Oh,
I've done some self trimming, which probably is a bad idea.
All I need to do, because we actually did this before, Leger. We actually had our old boss like reach out, say something to Brinson to cut his hair, and literally he went and cut his hair because of this. I don't even know if we ever told you that we did that, but we had Port reach out to be like, yeah, we're like, hey man, you need to cut your hair. And Brinson was like, well, someone reached out. I knew what guy.
If you let me know, it's like I got the haircut the next day.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, I don't care what Brady thinks about my hair. I got somebody told me somebody gave me said I had some Bradley Cooper vibes going recently, so I'll take that.
I'm sure you would take that.
Can you hear?
Did you spit out your water there? You spit out your Irish coffee?
I was holding it as best I could, man.
Yeah,
I mean, you literally do look more like Charlie Day than you do anything else. So,
well, I mean,
embody that.
I might dress up as Charlie Day. Brady's the one who called that first one. Let's settle down, Chris Pratt. You're gonna need to bulk up a little bit to get. That's not to spoil.
Day man.
Day man.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
all right, let's go.
Right.
Were you trying to fire some coaches, Will, or what was the game we were trying to play today on the show?
Oh,
well, no. So EK came up. Eric K, our boss, came up with an idea for top like hottest non-head coaching seats. For instance, and it actually may have stemmed from the retired Reverend Ann Brinson, my mother, who I've mentioned this on like several shows in a row now. But she texted me and was like, why is the Panthers head coach calling plays? Like, he's not very good at it. They were at the Panthers game on Sunday, and she was like, is that common in the NFL? And I went through and did the math, and like, depending on what you think about Jacksonville, because don't we agree Press Taylor's still calling the plays in Jacksonville?
Yes, that's the word we're getting at.
Then I think it is 14 of 18 offensive head coaches call plays for their teams because you got 14.
Wow, I didn't know the number was that vast.
Yeah,
I was a little surprised too. Zach. So what do you guys think about it? Do you think coaches should be more involved, less involved? I mean, obviously you have like Kyle Shanahan, who no one's going to criticize.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll put it this way. It depends on your process. Just because you have a guy who's actually ultimately deciding on it, a lot of times there's communication depending on who's responsible for what. It could be an area of the field. It could be a situation, first, second down, third down. It all depends on the construct. There's some who literally just control it all themselves. And there's some who they literally break it down by situation. And they'll say, hey, like whoever's like coordinating the run game, whoever's coordinating the pass game, whoever's a third down, red zone. What's our best call for this situation? What are we seeing? What do we like here? Yeah. And they'll have a quick conversation about it. Boom, the play's in. Like, so it all depends on how it works. Like you mentioned Carolina, Frank Reich, who's called plays for a while, played quarterback, has been in the NFL for a long time. He's got a heck of a staff though, man. Like when you look at all the experience of offensive coaches, like Caldwell's on that staff, not even as a traditional coach. Thomas Brown is the actual named OC. Josh McCown's the quarterback coach. Park Frazier's like their pass game coordinator. They've got a lot of guys. Yeah, I mean, it's just when you look at the way they've constructed their staff, there's a lot of guys they can rely on. So I don't know exactly how they're doing that. I got the chance to call the game this past weekend. So I guess hello to the Brinson family. It would have been nice to say a lot, hi to your mom, Will.
I know. I actually thought that like because I had the game on and I heard you. I was like, God, that voice annoys the crap out of me. How do I remember? How do I recognize that?
I was like, what do you think? I said it was Romo. I've gotten that a couple times. They're like, you sound like Tony Romo a lot. I'm like,
yeah, you sound like a stopped up Tony Romo.
Thank you.
Damon, I was like, crap. I wish Brady had. I think you even mentioned like you were calling the Lions, but the Vikings, but I hadn't like put it together that you were going to be in Charlotte. And I would have definitely told my parents to like say what's up or turn around and
Here's what I
wave.
didn't
Pull up
realize.
to the game.
Dude, there was a huge contingent of Vikings fans there.
Oh, they travel well.
Well, it wasn't even travel. Apparently, there's been a big migration of people who are from Pittsburgh or Minnesota to Charlotte.
Oh, okay.
And so half the stadium was in purple.
right?
Yeah. And the craziest thing was they bring out the big drum to hit right as we entered the fourth quarter.
They're saying skull.
All the Vikings fans started with a clap.
Oh, no way.
So
no.
they stopped the drum because they realized, oh, this is a bad look. Half the stands of Vikings fans don't clap with it.
Oh, my
It was
God.
awesome. I know. It was,
Yeah,
it was a bad look for the Panthers fan base.
I didn't watch a whole lot of that game just because it was that basically the Panthers got the pick six, and then it was all right, you've got your chance here. You need to produce 11 points on offense to win this game. And
I mean, technically they produced 6.
Exactly.
They got halfway there.
right, they needed, yeah. They actually needed more than 11.
The NFL has held a league in every game, but is winless.
Yeah, probably. They had a lead in that one.
That's what I'm saying. I think they've had a lead in every single game, which is tough.
Well, so I mean, I was gonna. Do we want to run through really quickly these quarterbacks? You want to go on to something else? And I think it's kind of interesting. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this: is Frank Reich on the hot seat as far as a play caller goes? As far as being the play caller, is he on the hot seat?
Not at all.
No? I mean,
It's a personnel issue for them right now. I mean, if you look at the Panthers tape and you turn it on, this is the first time, and you talked about how cool, calm, collective Bryce Young has been. I think this is the first time I ever saw him frustrated in the game. Right? Yeah. There was a play, I think they threw a screen out, and he kind of did his hand like this after the play. I was like, I've never seen him do that. And it lets you know, when you turn on tape, nobody's open, Brady. In man coverage, guys cannot get separation. You've heard the rumors of the Panthers, supposedly looking for a true number one receiver. The only issue with that is teams usually don't give away number one receiver. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because they're truly all in on Bryce Young. And we talked about how he processes the game, how he thinks about the game, how he works throughout the week. I think he is the right pick for them. They just got to get the kid some help, man. It's tough. And the O-line has struggled for him as well this year. So I think if they get some better pass catchers in there where guys can create some separation, next year, I think Mingo takes another step as year 2 receiver. I think, Bryce Young will be their future and they'll be fine. But right now it's a struggle just because nobody can get open.
Yeah, I mean, they rely on Thielen for everything. He got hurt in that game, was out for a little bit. And so it's tough, when that's all you really got. And he's a young player. I think one of the things starting with the coaching staff, they were saying when you were in the classroom, he's got all it down, you get the field. Sometimes it doesn't always, go the way you think it's going to go. So it's a personnel issue. It's something else. I don't think they're going to change Frank Reich calling the plays. I mean, I don't really know if it makes sense to move on.
I'm not suggesting that they should. I just think it's I just get these questions a lot because I live here, and it's people are I can't remember, somebody was texting me, it was they gotta blow up this coaching staff. It was the coaching staff has been here for 6 months. This is a great coaching staff.
Talking to the staff, one of the comments was kind of hey, there's a lot of rebuilding to do here. I don't know if it felt that way because last year there wasn't as much development, right? They moved on from Matt Rule pretty early, and you get Steve Wilkes in there. And look, Steve Wilkes is trying to get a head coaching job, right? And so each week, he's hey,
he's just trying to win.
How do we got to win? How do we got to win? And it's hard then because you're not really focused on developing or thinking about past this year. And you can't if you're in Steve Wilkes' position. So I completely get it. And that's really when you fire a coach in season, that's what you get out of it. You're not going to get any development. It's all in, and everyone's going to maximize their opportunity now. And I think it then led into a team of saying, okay, we have a new staff. We draft a quarterback number 1 overall we really like, but where are we at everywhere else? Yeah. And they're just so far from where I think they need to be personnel-wise, ultimately to compete at the NFL level.
I just looked at Bryce Young's next-gen stats passing charts, which show, it's where he threw the football. If you had to guess, how many passing attempts longer than 25 yards does he have on the season?
One. So one longer than 25. It was 8 longer than 20. Yeah, I think he's completed 1 or 2.
Yeah. There's one attempt of right around 40 yards. That's the only one past 30. This one shows, and I don't think they're doing air yards here, but it's basically, it's one completion past 20 yards.
Which is twofold. It's not a knock on him. It's that they
can't protect him. They can't get vertical. Yeah,
right. And they can't get vertical. And they can't protect him. And it's a combination of things. So, but again, that's when you can move on from next up as far as play calling for the team that you think is on the hot seat.
Yeah, well, no, I think one that kind of dovetails interestingly with it. Like Justin Fields, is he on the hot seat as far as the long-term quarterback option for the Bears? Because Chicago now 0-4, the Panthers are 0-4, and the Panthers are in this position where if Carolina, like, what happens if Carolina gives the Bears the number 1 overall pick? Meaning, I think, as we were pointing out, it's like they could have basically had the combination would be like Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Jalen Carter in 2 seconds instead of Bryce Young. That would be a tough scene for Carolina.
Right.
Then,
I'm not sure how you got to that, but okay.
Yeah, Chicago had the number 1 pick. The Panthers traded up to get it.
Right, but they could have at 9. They could have taken Jalen Carter. Still have their number 1 pick this year. Would be terrible. Would end up. I don't think they'll end up giving the Bears the number 1 pick, but I do think they'll be giving the Bears a pick somewhere between 5 and 10. Best case for Carolina.
Right, but don't the Bears potentially have 1 and 2?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And so, like, if they have 1 and 2, Justin Fields.
To that point, like, we can always go back and say, what if? I think if you look ahead, you could say, well, Caleb Williams and who now? It's
Marvin Harrison,
best left tackle, Marvin Harrison, whoever feels like is the best edge rusher. I mean, there's a number of names you can throw in the conversation. But I wonder if the Bears decide to do the Houston Texans, then they go Stroud, Anderson, and say, we just know these 2 guys are going to be studs.
Correct.
Let's go there. And if they go that route, or if they say, let's take Caleb Williams, let's trade out, knowing someone's going to give up a boatload to get Drake May ahead of whoever's at number 3.
That's a lot.
And then we're able to get either, maybe it's not Marvin Harrison, but a tackle that we love, or
Brandon
a wide receiver
in Georgia, or like,
kind of high to take him in top 10, but okay, depending on where they drop back to. So
the point being is like, the larger point is if the Bears have the first overall pick, there's a 0.0% chance that they would stick with Justin Fields and use trade out and use those picks on help for Justin Fields, right?
Yeah, I mean,
he would have to turn it around like soon. I think, and you made this point last year talking about the Jets and Bryce Young. If you're in a position where you take a transcending player and Caleb Williams, I think they ultimately trade away from Justin Fields, right? They trade him out. They get Caleb Williams. And to your point, I didn't even think about that scenario, but it makes a lot of sense. Drake May, people are going to want to trade up to get him at 2. Why not trade away? Or do you think Marvin Harrison is that good where you feel like you can't trade that pick? Either way, you get 2, generational type players at 1 and 2. So I think ultimately, if they do end up with the number 1 pick, there's no way you don't take Caleb Williams.
He is that good, but then you see like Emeka Egbuka and you're like, all right, what's the difference between Harrison and Emeka Egbuka? I don't know. Again, that's all for the evaluators to decide. Too. Yeah, there's a number of guys that probably in that conversation, but there's a lot to consider at this point. I think if they end up moving on from the coach, you'd have to think they end up moving on from Justin Fields too at some point. This wasn't Ryan Pohl's draft pick, and unfortunately, that's how it goes if things don't work out for you as a quarterback.
The number 1 pick, by the way, in the draft for the hot seat would have been Matt Canada and the Steelers, obviously. I mean,
but is it really hot if Mike Tomlin's not willing to move on from him?
True.
I mean, there's a stat. They haven't had more than we talked about this with Pete on yesterday's pod, but they haven't had more than 400 yards of offense in 39 consecutive games since Matt Canada took over. And over that time span, other NFL teams have had 295 combined games with over 400 yards. That's pretty freaking.
I can't remember if it was Warren Sharp who said this. He's done like a deep dive into all of this and just all the drives they've had that either end up in a turnover or a punt. They're like second worst in the league. The one that stood out to me though was when if their opponent scores 22 points. If it's under that, they actually win a fair amount of their games. If it's over that, they've won they're like 1 in 15 or something, at least from his research, which is pretty damning only because you're basically saying to yourself, like, if our defense doesn't come out and shut out opponents, we don't have a shot in these games.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, point being is like Matt Canada, I mean, yeah, I guess you could say he doesn't have a hot seat, but he really just get a vote of confidence?
I don't know. After they lost this week, they said they're going to put on pads today in practice.
Well, I think Tomlin was saying he wasn't ready to move on from him. I don't know if it's a vote of confidence.
You better have a guy in-house you feel good about moving on to if you're going to move on from an OC.
Unfortunately, as I pointed out to you guys, three of the coaches on that coaching staff are from the 2013 NC State football team.
That's right. You did say that.
They didn't win a single conference game. So
but
I don't know.
That's the brilliance when you're a play caller, right? You bring everyone along with you, and then it's like, none of these guys are going to do a better job than me.
So get rid of me,
pal. Yeah.
Get rid of me.
That's the old. There's an old radio host trick where it's like if you do a solo show, like if you're like you have whoever fills in for you, just make sure that they're like you never get somebody who might like take your job, right? Like that's yeah.
Well, I was going to say, too, when you're talking about play calling, you said 14 of the 18 head coaches that are offensive-minded, right? Yeah. They call their own plays. The other 4 don't. Sometimes it's like, well, if I oversee it all and things don't look good offensively, it's like, well, it's that guy doing it. Yeah. I mean, I guess you can always use the, like, I'm going to fire myself and I'm going to delegate to someone else. There is that movie, too. Like, you just take that hat off and put it down.
That's why I thought it was alarming. Well, not alarming, but I didn't know it was that high of a number. Like, I knew it was, McVay, Zach Taylor, Kyle Shanahan, LaFleur. I'm like, dang, 14 coaches?
Can I kind of tell you why, too, just getting, like, talking to, different coaches in the league? Like, one of the things that I've kind of gathered from them, too, is there's so much on your plate. Like, there's so much on your plate.
Yeah.
You really can't. It's hard to oversee the entire thing and be able to really, like, understand to a deep level the way you need to in detail each side of what they're doing. So you got to have a strong coach opposite of whatever your calling card is.
Sure.
And then a lot of times, like, from game planning standpoint, like, you've got to be the guy. Like, you can rely on your coaches, but there it is. See? I knew those guys had to win. We told you. You didn't want to listen. Now you're going to be a zombie.
Pretty
much.
You
just meant so the alert didn't go off while we were on a live podcast. Or do you think I'm being, like, tested for some vaccine here?
No, the alert went off. It was supposed to go off at 2:18 Eastern time.
Yeah.
I thought it was at 2 o'clock. You told me it was too late to turn it off.
2:18. We were messing with you. We just wanted to do it before the show started.
Oh, you only wanted to do it so that we'd be professional and the alert wouldn't go off during the show.
Oh, and you look unprofessional? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't. I mean, look.
Someone say you that moppy head of hair would look unprofessional right now.
I'll put on a hat if you need me to. God.
All I know is my baseball coach, Tim Saunders, would not appreciate that head of hair.
I mean, I think anybody would appreciate this head of hair. By the way, the four play callers, the 4 teams coached by offensive coaches who don't have them calling the plays. The Eagles, they have with
Nick Sirianni,
Brian
Johnson. The Giants with Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka.
Well, there's been question marks about that.
I don't know about that.
Do we think Dable's calling the plays?
I think it's half and half.
I think there's a lot of coordination there.
I actually want to ask you about that. How do you feel about that as a quarterback when it is like a almost tug of war situation as far as it's going back and forth between, like, one half maybe the OC's calling it in the second half the head coach?
It's usually never that. I mean, it's usually like, if you change up in season, the hard thing is like your coordinator has a personality. Like a personality in the sense of, like, depending on the day you're having, whether he has faith in you, right? Like, you throw a pick, is he going to come out, run the ball 2 times and see where we're at in third down? If it's 3rd and 3, say run again.
Right.
Is he that kind of guy, or is he going to come out first down and say, nope, keep slinging it? Like, this is what the defense is presenting. It's the best down for us to pass. I trust you. Keep slinging the football around. There's all sorts of different, personalities, relationships that quarterbacks have with their coaches. And to me, like, that's what's most important is that learning curve. Like, it starts up again the second you put in a new coach who's calling plays.
The Lions are also one of those teams. Technically, Dan Campbell, an offensive guy, but, like, I think it would be
Ben
weird
Johnson calling
them. I almost think you could, like, take them off. I didn't include them at first because it's like, just because it's, I mean, like, I think it would be weird if Dan Campbell called plays, wouldn't it?
He actually did it.
Yeah, he's done it before.
Did he do it in Miami? Or did he do it?
I think when he became the interim, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the OG PC principal.
Oh, you get old school brand of football if he's calling the plays.
Hell
yeah, that's right. And then the
Ostrich eggs.
So Giants, Eagles, Lions, and who was the fourth one that I'm forgetting?
Have you guys had ostrich eggs before?
I've never had ostrich.
I want to now.
You've
never had ostrich eggs?
Yo.
I mean, he's like, what do you say, a prehistoric animal?
Literally.
I'm trying to think, who's the other?
Who's the fourth one, Will?
What's that? I've had an ostrich egg before.
No, we were saying who's the fourth offensive
coach
that doesn't call plays?
So Eagles, Cowboys, Jaguars, and Lions. And, like, there's Jaguars.
I feel like the Jaguars is up in there too.
Yeah. And so, like, I mean, basically, I think my mom was pretty surprised. I was kind of surprised too to just find out that it's, like, that high. So you could almost say it's like 16 of 18 coaches.
Well, I find it interesting. It seems like there was a influx of new younger coaches once they became head coaches. That trend kind of changed, right? Like when we were playing and back in the day, you didn't really see that as much, right? Now, like with the McVays, the Shanahans, the Floors, when they became head coaches, they were like, well, I'm going to keep continuing to call plays because I know how my offense runs, and I think, we have the team built around this offense. I feel like I'm the best person to do the job. I think that's what it's been.
I think it's human nature. It's hard to like delegate, right? Like if you got a head coaching job, like this is your break, and then you put it in someone else's hands, you're like, what's this guy doing? Like it's human nature, right? Like it's like you'd rather go down with the ship that if you're controlling, you're the one steering it, right? Like that's how I feel about it. Like it's hard to put your fate in someone else's hands. I'll never forget. I had a college coach tell me this once. Because I said, hey, do you ever give the quarterback some of his own opportunities? He goes, let me tell you something. All right. I got a really nice house. Like a really nice house. He goes, and that is one expensive mortgage. And I am not, all right, putting that mortgage and my livelihood on an 18-year-old's decision-making process. All right. So he looks to the sideline when he gets the plays from us. All right. I don't let him do any of that stuff. I was like, okay, that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
Now I get it.
Why do you think
I feel like we could narrow down who this was by like looking up like where like when you were at Notre Dame and like who, because you
comb through all the different. Well, it wasn't at Notre Dame. It was when I was calling games. Yeah, since 2014, comb through all the games. Will, good luck.
Good luck. So it was Tommy. So it was Tommy Tuberville, is what you're saying.
Yeah. By the way, not technically true because I feel like most coaches they like evolve into sounding like a more country or southern accent. What it is? Yeah, they start coaching ball. They're like all of a sudden they start dipping. They're like,
coach voice.
Yeah, hey, man, I don't know. You see,
I just found out. I just speaking of moppy heads of hair. I was checking. I thought you were saying it was when you were at Notre Dame, so I was looking up the exact years. There's a picture on your Wikipedia page with you holding a microphone with some frayed cargo shorts, brah. Oh, you might have cut them off yourself in a Cubs t-shirt and a moppy head of hair leading some kind of rally at Notre Dame. I love this.
It was a pep rally on South Quad. Before Notre Dame USC. I was wearing a Cubs shirt. I know. I've seen the photo.
I've got the same Cubs shirt, I think, except with the Harry Carey.
It was a Dylan pep rally. That's actually the night that I gave all the students the hotel and the phone number of where USC was staying. I got some intel.
How did you get that intel?
Yeah, it's a small town in South Bend. You find out a lot of things about your opponents.
Harry, let's toss that picture up just so dudes can see it. I mean, it's on your Wikipedia page. Anybody can go get it. But like,
oh yeah, it's on my Wikipedia. Thank you. And by the way, those shorts are from Hollister when I worked at Hollister back in high school. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe the first sentence is.
That was the whole point. You work there, and then you get the discount, and then you spend all your money on the clothes. You walk away with nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. By the way, I think other hot seat, just for reference, if you want to talk about it before we take a break, but I'll just throw them out there, and then we'll be done with the conversation. See, we're not rooting for anybody to lose their jobs. We're just discussing if there's a chance for change coming. It's the NFL. It's part of the business. Jack Del Rio is the defensive coordinator for the Commanders. It got mentioned by EK, who's a Commanders fan. Mac Jones and Desmond Ridder as quarterbacks. Then Zach Taylor, offensive coordinator. Taylor Swift as Travis Kelce's girlfriend. I mean, look, they go on a losing streak.
Hold on. It's Travis Kelce.
I was about to say it's Travis Kelce in that category.
I mean, I'm going to pitch this one to dudes, but it seems like it's outside of the norm for who Kelce's dated. I'm just saying.
Yep.
You know she's got a movie coming out like on the 13th, right?
Oh, really?
And did you know that the number one podcast in America right now, not sports podcast, podcast, New Heights. Travis Kelce's on every other commercial during like football games.
This is an equal beneficial relationship.
My wife was sitting next to me, we're watching it, and she goes, and I was like, man, every commercial he's on now. What is up with this?
Mr. Pfizer.
Who was on the next commercial? Was Capital One with Taylor Swift. I was like, let's just be open about it.
Like Capital One, if you look at the bottom, it talks about the movie that's coming out. So
the
NFL is getting a new crowd. Taylor Swift is getting a new crowd.
I'll be honest with you. Are they? Are they?
They're getting a little. There's a little more.
For the Jets Chiefs game was one of the highest.
Yeah, it was a higher for. Yeah. I'll put it this way: my wife has not watched any more football. All right, since Taylor Swift has been doing games.
I would say that like
media's gone crazy.
I would say that like there's been more interest from like more interest in football a little bit from people who just wouldn't normally watch football, obviously. And then I think more like I don't know how much more Taylor Swift can get, but I mean like she's gonna take all the publicity she can get. Do you think they're really dating?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, I don't really care. But I would say this: does it work both ways? Like, if let's just say the conspiracy theory, the NFL approached her and they said like, "This is the plan, and this is who we think, and this is like how we're going to do this."
Yeah.
There's a few things at play here. One, if I was one of the TV networks, I'd be like, "Yeah, you're going to spread this over 4 games." Because if I'm Fox, CBS, and ABC, ESPN, I for sure, and NBC now, I for sure want to make sure that we all get a bite at the apple for the increase in ratings. Okay, that's the first thing. The second is, it's like, does it work for her crowd? If this is an effort to grow the female population as far as watching the NFL games, like, does this work for her? Does she bring in more dudes to come listen to Taylor Swift? I don't know.
I think so.
Maybe women that are heavily into football that maybe weren't Taylor Swift fans.
Now they are Taylor Swift fans?
Yeah, I mean, it's not outrageous. I mean, I think it is definitely mutually beneficial and a symbiotic relationship that is helping both sides. So, but as you point out,
I was listening to 80s rock earlier today working out. I did not listen to any Taylor Swift. So that's zero effect on me in my life.
Well, you have noted that you listen to Taylor Swift a lot because you have like 4 daughters or 5 daughters.
I didn't say a lot. I said at times when I'm in the car, they'll ask for a Taylor Swift song, and I will put it on. Now, sometimes Daddy, though, can't get to the right song, and he just plays what he wants by accident.
Sometimes Daddy accidentally vetoes the Taylor Swift.
Dad's phone's broken again.
I see what you meant there, Will.
Yeah. Sorry, my phone's broken.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, return of some big name stars from the PUP list, possibly this week. We'll tell you who it is and what to expect next.
First place I learned about death was a pet cemetery. Dead things buried in that land would come back as something else. Something's wrong. Continue.
Who needs time to adjust?
Something's fucking good.
Radar.
Woo! Man,
Wow.
You can't see it if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever else you get your podcast. If you're listening there, give us a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/@NFL on CBS, you would have just caught a Paramount Plus ad for Pet Cemetery, some sort of new pet cemetery. And as we learned last week, guys, all 3 of us hate horror movies.
Oh man!
Like I picked up my phone. I picked up my phone and was not looking at that ad.
Me and Brady were looking at the screen like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, and I'm looking down like, "No thanks. Don't want any interest in that." I do have interest though in the return of Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor, particularly Jonathan Taylor, who I drafted a lot in fantasy football. What do you think happens with Taylor? And we can get to the tush push maybe in a minute. But what do you think happens with Jonathan Taylor and Cooper Kupp upon their return here, dudes?
Honestly, I've been saying this for the longest, even in the offseason throughout training camp. I thought the best place for Jonathan Taylor was right there with the Indianapolis Colts and Shane Steichen. Now, again, can relationships be, patched up? We'll see with the Indianapolis Colts. It seems like it came to a head with Jonathan Taylor, and he seemed like he didn't want to play for the Colts at all. Him and Jim Irsay supposedly had words. We'll see where that is. And we know this with the locker room and football period. It's a really unique job, right, where guys say things, and at the end of the day, we're all here for one common goal, right? You can kind of patch things up and get things going, but if you just look at the history of Shane Steichen when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles and Miles Sanders in the career year he had, I mean, if you're Jonathan Taylor, like if you were healthy in the beginning of the year, I thought he could go for 1,800 yards in that offense just because you have a freak of nature at quarterback in Anthony Richardson, and with the zone read and RPO, like defenses have to respect that so much. It's going to slow linebackers and defensive ends down, so it's going to open up holes for Jonathan Taylor. So we've seen, Zach
Moss?
Zach Moss has had some success in that offense already. Just imagine Jonathan Taylor in that offense, and I don't think he ends up being traded. I think he'll be right there. In regards to Cooper Kupp, he's going to go back to that number 1 role. We know Puka Nacua has been an amazing story, and it'll be a good number 3 receiver for him now because Tutu Atwell, to me, is their number 2 guy. But Cooper Kupp is going to get the target share when he comes back.
You think so?
I know so.
Puka Nacua has been good.
He's been balling, but I think Matt Stafford really trusts,
Matthew Stafford's the wide receiver kingmaker. Like Calvin Johnson
is okay. Hold on, Matt Stafford made Calvin Johnson.
No. Like if you look at
that's hilarious.
What?
Calvin Johnson Calvin Johnson had the single biggest wide receiver fantasy season of all time. And then it was beaten by Cooper Kupp, and now Puka Nacua is on track for it.
Could have put any quarterback with Calvin Johnson, and Calvin Johnson would have had a huge fantasy season.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, but he had the greatest
yards with me at quarterback.
We had
I mean,
2,000
he's
yards.
a freak. Like Calvin Johnson walked in the NFL and he could throw on a gold jacket. We've never seen a receiver that moves like that with his size.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying.
I think it'll be interesting to see where Sean McVay and what he does with the reads and with the offense. He's so good at diagramming things to get guys open. Who does he prioritize? Who does he kind of work to? Does he kind of balance that out between the two? Because they're both going to get a lot of targets. In regards to Taylor, the game's the reward. And I do wonder, because like a lot of players, when they talk about, I'm going to sit out or I might be done this year and all that. It's not hard until you start seeing teams playing. And then you start seeing teams playing, you're like, oh, this is it. Like, this is what you miss. This is obviously all the work. Some guys love the process, the work that goes behind it. Yeah. But like the game is what you cherish the most. And I do wonder if that maybe changed Jonathan Taylor's feelings towards the Colts, towards Jim Irsay and his comments and the situation they're in. And if he's looking at Shane Steichen, and if he's looking at the AFC South going, well, everyone is 2-2 right now.
I was about to say that too. Like
we're all in it.
Yeah.
And Zach Moss, to your point's running well. Anthony Richardson is looking like he's going to be a stud. Maybe this isn't a bad deal for me to get through this year.
And then figure it out.
Yeah. It's honestly, that's probably what's best for him. But again, I think he's got to play to prove at least that he's healthy enough in order for a team to give anything as far as decent trade value, right, Will?
Yeah, and I think too, I also don't understand why the Colts don't look at this as, okay, we have Anthony Richardson, who's looked really good as a rookie, like surprisingly good at both passing and running the football on this rookie contract. We cannot pay him for the next 3 years. Why don't we just give Jonathan Taylor like this deal that gives him close enough to what he wants over the next 3 years? You're not even being close to the salary cap. Who gives a crap if you have to give up like some cash to pay this running back? I think you pay Taylor and bring him in and keep him around there and make life easier for Anthony Richardson. But that's just my.
I haven't looked at the roster, so I'm kind of asking this question here on a whim. But who else would be up next?
Pittman's up after this year, I think.
Okay.
Pittman,
I don't does that look like as far as
what type of money is
he's not going to reset the market, but that's the other thing is the considerations for who else is there that they need to extend.
And we've talked about this before, right? I think this is where the owners are banding together to draw a line in the sand. I don't even think it has anything to do with Jonathan Taylor. I think it has to do with his position, and rightfully so. We see Saquon Barkley already banged up this year, right? So they just don't want to play running backs that type of money anymore. And to Will's point, you're not paying anybody else. I think if you were in the realm of $15 million, I think they should get a deal done around that. I think Christian McCaffrey's making 17 or something like that. You're not paying him Christian McCaffrey money, but you get $14, $15 million. And I don't know, because there was reports about Jonathan Taylor and he had multiple agents, had one guy, then they had another guy, and they're like, we're not going to negotiate with the new guy. I don't know if somebody needs to sit down and talk to him and be like, look here, you're a running back in this league. As far as longevity, the history shows dudes get hurt. You've been hurt. Matter of fact, you're coming off an injury right now. Get some financial security for the future instead of playing out this year. But the thing was, it seemed like the Colts didn't even want to negotiate with him, period, anyway. So I don't know where they go from here. If he plans on getting a new deal next year, even though they can tag him, he has to prove that he can be healthy first and foremost anyway. So,
yeah. All right, let's talk about the Tush Push. Hot topic these days around the NFL. We got Jack Del Rio discussing it.
Well, it's not being officiated as illegal, so we just have to prepare for it. I mean, I would personally like to see it eliminated, not just because they run it better than anybody, although they do run it better than anybody, but I don't think that's a football play. I think it's a nice rugby play, and it's not what we're looking for in football.
We actually had 3 different teams other than the Eagles attempt this over the weekend.
Stopped.
And all 3 teams failed
terribly.
Yeah. Brady, do you think I
actually think it makes a case for not getting rid of it because not everyone's utilizing it and successful with it. So whether you want to say it's the personnel, it's Jason Kelsey and the offensive line and Jalen Hurts, or the technique and the coaching behind it. Yeah. Look, they had a first mover advantage on everyone else. And I talked with both staffs about that specific short yardage play, goal line play, and said, is this something you're looking at putting in? They're like, yep. And I'm like, but like everyone else, they're trying to figure out what makes it so unstoppable, what makes it so special. And everyone says, oh, it's personnel. Yeah. A lot of coaches I talk to don't feel like that's the case. they feel like it's more of the technique in which that other team that they're executing versus other teams. For example, when you saw the Giants try to use it, if you looked at the Giants' offensive line, they never got underneath the D-line enough to move them to then allow Daniel Jones to be pushed into that next wave coming through.
Yeah.
And so the hard part is like, if I'm another team out there in short yardage, like I wouldn't even like try. Like, why am I trying to imitate something that I'm not going to be able to execute as well? I don't have that personnel. What's the point? Like you've got other things that you can rely on that are probably more successful for you. I just worry it's not a safe play. I think on the Giants when 2 players got injured on that.
Hurt on it.
And I think the other problem is you can't pull players, you can push players. The reality is that like you can't tell when they're in that scrum whether or not anyone's being pulled.
Exactly.
And look, we used to not be able to push players. And so if we got rid of that rule like it used to be, this whole entire play goes away.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of one, and I think you talked about this on Twitter, and maybe I'm mistaken. I mean, Jalen Hurts squats like 600-700 pounds, right? As far as
but he gets up on guys and it's not him pushing anymore. Yeah, it's guys behind him pushing.
So it's execution, and you know this, Brady. That's not something you can practice during practice because you're nervous about guys getting picked up in that scenario. So that, and I know, Will, you're about to ask me about defensively, how do you potentially maybe stop this? Brady spoke to it perfectly. For one, the defensive line has to get lower than the offensive line. I think Jason Kelce does a masterful job of being already kind of like cocked up with his head down when he snaps the ball and getting under the defensive line. And you got to think, he knows when the ball is coming out. He knows when he's going to snap it. The defensive line doesn't know when the ball is getting snapped, so he already has that advantage. And then, 2, the linebackers have to go high in that scenario. Too many times, guys don't aim high. They try to get behind the D-line and push. If their defensive line is going low and they get leverage on the offensive line, somebody has to meet the quarterback midway when he takes the ball out and is getting pushed. So it's a combination of the 2 of those things on defense.
In defense of the defense, and people might say you're stupid for saying this, but like if I was a linebacker, I'm going to launch helmet first every time.
I would too.
In all seriousness, like it should be.
It's a half a yard. There's no first down.
It's not allowed.
Yeah.
That's against the rules for player safety, and it'll be a personal foul. But the response is, what else are you supposed to do?
Yeah,
like, in all seriousness, what else are you supposed to do? And to Jack Del Rio's point, it does look like a rugby play.
Yeah.
And that's where I think there's a lot of people who, if you're not a fan of it, that's what you're going to use. If you are a fan of it, you probably root for the Eagles. The funniest thing I was talking to one of the staffs about it. They were talking about the snap because obviously, that in that particular play, it's different. It's not a normal under center snap. Yeah. You touched on it. Like Kelce is going to put his butt up, his head down, almost so low that it's very different. And as soon, because of the reaction, as he snaps it up there as a quarterback, you've got to try to seed it and make sure you get it, and you've got to get low.
Correct.
So it's actually a much more difficult play to execute than people realize, and that's why it's like tremendous to see Kelce and Jalen Hurts the way they do it. But again, the NFL is like not going to be able to step in here because it's not being used widely enough, successfully enough, to then say it's a huge advantage. And until there's other injuries that come along with it, it's not going to be a player safety issue.
And it's got to be somebody major that gets injured. Like, remember when I think it was Mahomes that got hurt on a snake?
Yeah. I mean,
so if something like that happens, maybe the NFL.
I'll be honest with you. I think if there's a really bad neck injury, then they'd restart.
That's what I'm saying. So, and then also, whether people want to admit it or not, that, in the NFL, they care more about offense, right? So if it's an advantage for the Eagles on offense or teams on offense, they're not going to change it unless somebody does get severely hurt during it.
The thing that I wouldn't like about it as a quarterback is we used to run this all the time. I mean, even whenever I got in the NFL, like you always had a call, you get to a quarterback sneak quick, you know, and the New England system was always dog, blue go, you know, and then you'd find an A gap that was open. I always hated when we brought more bigger bodies in there because the more you do that, the more then you get big guys like you who are now in these gaps. Like now you're in the A gaps. Now I'm like, now I'm thinking when I get the ball, I'm not going right away. I'm waiting to see like where the seam presents itself, and then I'm trying to sneak over there. Like I remember there was one. I almost took the ball and ran like it was a speed option.
I've seen quarterbacks go all the way to the CD gap with it.
Literally, when I was in Cleveland, we ran a play like that, and I just like kept the football and ran around the edge like it was an option play for like 20 yards.
I don't know. That was the changeup for the Eagles this past week. Like Jalen Hurts essentially was like an option. He snapped the ball, and there were people behind him to push, and they took it to the C gap like he was running the option and then got the first down. So, I mean, that's the changeup for offenses when those defensive guys crowd up the A and B gaps and slant everybody inside. Like, you can't be able to get the first down in the A gap and take the ball outside.
On that play where the Giants tried to run it on Monday night, if they had like faked it and bootleg Danny Dimes out, he would have run for 70 yards before he fell on his face.
That's self-scouting. You got to self-scout and realize, how teams are attacking that, quarterback sneak or push tush or whatever they call it.
The brotherly shove, if you will.
Brotherly shove.
I mean,
Yeah.
Daniel Jones has those long legs like a gazelle. I mean, can you imagine him out there in the open field just galloping?
Well, remember when he fell?
I was about to say, you forgot the time he was in open field.
Yeah,
fell.
that one. Yeah, don't worry about that.
Ran out his own form.
Yeah,
He's
like gazelling down the field and like at home in the Meadowlands and just whoop.
Turf monster get you now.
Turf monster got him. That's right. Any thoughts on J.C. Jackson going back to the Patriots?
Very interesting, right? This was a situation where he was one of the prize,
Top free agents
in
for
the
sure.
offseason 2 years ago. And I thought him going to the Chargers was going to give them a leg up in trying to knock off the Chiefs in that division. It just hasn't worked out. I don't know if it's Brandon Staley's system. I don't know if it's J.C. Jackson having that freak injury last year that maybe has slowed him down, but he's going back home where the last time we saw him, he was a Pro Bowl player. So we know that it's one thing the Patriots will do. They will welcome you back home and they get guys to play at a high level. I would assume with the injury to Christian Gonzalez and a few other guys that they'd probably insert him pretty quickly to be the guy there on the outside. So I thought it was interesting that the Chargers were willing to wipe their hands and pay most of that money up front as a signing bonus.
Yes.
Be like, we're done. I think the Patriots only paying like 1.5 of that of his contract. So it was just a marriage that didn't work between the two guys. And, you're paying a guy that much and he's a healthy scratch. That's a head scratcher.
I think that's probably one of the best things that Bill Belichick is you can always hang your hat on in his career is he takes players, figures out what they're able to do consistently well, and he puts them in that position. He doesn't ask them to do anything outside of their job. Yeah. When he says do your job, he's asking them to do a job that he feels like is very specific to them and what they do well. So I'm expecting J.C. Jackson to go in there and play well. The staff knows what his strengths are and his weaknesses, and they obviously have a huge need for him. So, the Patriots are behind the 8 ball right now, and they need help defensively.
Yeah. New England. Let me ask you one more thing about the AFC. Just I think this is an interesting sort of discussion about the playoff picture. Like with Joe Burrow being hurt and Rodgers going down, where do we think this last wild card is going to come from? Because it is like, remember, we thought that it was going to be like 2 10-win teams are going to miss the playoffs.
I don't know if you guys remember, I was saying I thought the Bengals were going to regress this year. This is before the injury. I don't think people understand with Jesse Bates and Von Bell not being there, how big of a loss that was for that Cincinnati Bengals defense. And there was times last year where that offense struggled. The Bengals helped them up. This year, that defense is giving it up, man, for the Bengals. They've really struggled on that side of the ball. They've struggled on the
one good game against the Rams,
I was going to say they played well versus the Rams.
But other than that, they've really struggled. Giving it
they weren't that bad in week 1. I mean, it was kind of like no one was really great offensively. The weather was
bad weather
there.
But they got ran on easily.
I think it's interesting when you look through because the AFC North in particular, like the concerning thing about Cincinnati being 1-3 right now. They're 0-2 in the division. And so, like, for example, if you look at another 1-3 team, Minnesota, we mentioned, they're 0-0 in the division. They haven't played a divisional game. So it hits a little different when you haven't played divisional games because you could still get all that back. Even if you have a sub-500 record, right? We've seen that before. So it's tough to think who would be out of the AFC North. I mean, clearly Baltimore looks like the best team now.
And if Baltimore beats Pittsburgh, they'll be 3-0 in divisional road games before week 6. Which is wild.
That's massive.
And the weird thing is Pittsburgh will only be 1-1 though in divisional games. So there's still a lot of football left to be played.
I think the Browns are still a team. I mean, I know DTR played this past week and the defense didn't live up to what they've been the first couple weeks of the season. But it's hard when your offense isn't getting going. It's 3 and out. You got to play consistently all day long.
The Chargers are the team that I think you got to give a shot to.
I've been telling people, a lot of people didn't think they'd make the play. I have them as a playoff team this year. Now, again, I'm nervous about Brandon Staley and the way he makes decisions. Like 1 week he's extra aggressive, the next week he's not aggressive. I'm like, dude,
I don't know about that, man. I mean, this past week,
these last 2 weeks he's been ridiculously aggressive.
But then,
it hasn't bit him yet, but I know it will.
Did you guys think we couldn't really decide on yesterday's show? Do you think he told
Asante Samuel
to get down?
100%. He was waving for him to get down. That was one of the most egregious things when I was watching the game. I'm
got
going,
a score right there. They still got 3 timeouts.
There's 2:40 left.
Get at least further downfield. Yeah. Like he had plenty of room there. It was bizarre, but you could see him telling him to get down.
Yeah.
So
I don't know why he decisively run off the field like that.
Prisco was watching it and said that, like, on the all 22, I guess he was looking at the all 22 because today's Wednesday, checks out, right? Isn't it? Yeah. Anyway,
Prisco was, I think.
Yeah, it should be out there. So Prisco was watching it and said that it looked like Staley might have even been like celebrating, but was like doing it in a way that like made it look like he was saying get down.
I don't know. All I know is it looked like from the TV copy that I saw that he was telling him to get down.
Breaching a screenshot. It looks like he's like, if you're Sunday Samuel, you feel like he's telling you to get down. And if he runs for another 30 yards, one, it burns like 5 or 10 seconds off the clock. And then two, you're not in a position where you get backed up and you have to take this deep shot down the field. It's his coach.
Justin Herbert bailed him out again.
Yeah, his decision making is bad, man. But I mean, here's my hot take. 2 AFC South teams make the playoffs.
Ooh.
That's actually not a bad take, the way this season's kind of panned out so far this year. Who would
They're all 2-2.
Who would the two teams be?
I think I would go Jacksonville and Houston right now.
Oh, we got the Texans making a playoff run.
Man.
No respect for the Tennessee Titans and Mike Vrabel.
Unbelievable.
I love the Titans. I kind of love this whole division. Like, I think the whole division it's like they're
It's a lot better than everybody thought it was going to be, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
or it's not. I mean, depending on how you view 500.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went head to head AFC North, AFC South right now, who wins?
I'm still taking the talent of the AFC North.
Yeah, it's
I'm
still
just saying. I think the Ravens are
I think the
beating.
AFC North, everybody's healthy, is the best.
So, all right, so you get
division of football.
Ravens, and Jaguars. You take the Ravens. That's fine.
Ravens not even close.
Ravens.
Sure, that's fine. You get then who's the number 2 team in the AFC North against the
Probably got to be the Browns right now.
So Browns versus Titans. Browns did beat the Titans.
You saw what happened in that
Browns.
game. You saw what happened in that game.
Yeah, say the Browns beat the Titans,
Beat the brakes off of them.
but the Titans beat the brakes off the Bengals.
They did.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You
Yeah.
get all 500 teams in the AFC South. It's kind of unfair. You pitted the Titans against them.
I'm saying if we're doing it like Ryder Cup style. If we do it Ryder Cup style, I'll sacrifice I'll sacrifice like the Titan. I'll sacrifice one team up against the Browns, but I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, I think the bottom 2 teams, whether it's the Colts, Jaguars, whether it's the Colts, Texans, or Titans, are going to beat the Bengals and Steelers.
Well, I mean, Houston just beat the brakes off.
Houston did beat the
That's
brakes
what
off
I'm saying.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So the bottom 2 teams are the Titans and the Texans. They literally just beat the brakes off the bottom 2 teams in the AFC North.
You know the interesting thing about all the teams we're talking about? Like, a lot of those teams that beat the brakes off another team, it was a home game for them.
Right.
Like, if you look at Tennessee, how they played at home, opposed to how they play on the road, 2 totally different teams, right? So I think that's interesting earlier on in the season. And you have to be able to win a few road games to make a run in the playoffs. How does that start panning out as we go down the stretch?
I think instead of asking like who the wild card teams are, it's like let's construct which teams are going based on the AFC.
Yeah.
You're going to have Buffalo. You're probably going to
Buffalo,
have
Miami. Yep.
There's 2. You're
Kansas
going to have
City and
Baltimore.
Yep.
Kansas City. All right, that's 4. You got 3 spots left. Like, I think the Chargers, as you said, so far look like they could be another playoff team. The Browns, when Watson's there, they look like they could probably be another playoff team. Outside of that, that's probably where it opens the door for, whoever you feel like is going to come out of the AFC South, or at least having competition with, right? Because that's the division winner.
Yeah. So you got the division winner, and then it's like basically if you put the Chargers in and the division winner, it's the Browns. I mean, I guess the Steelers are there at 2-2. They don't inspire a lot of confidence right now with their offense, but their defense has played well. And then like the Raiders and the Patriots. So like, I mean,
at 1-3, you got the Patriots in the conversation.
I'm just saying like it basically comes down to like the Browns versus 3 AFC South teams for the final playoff spot.
Maybe. Are you ruling out the Patriots here?
No, that's why I said you can include the Patriots and the Raiders if you really want to.
I am. I think the Patriots are going downhill, man.
You can include Denver.
Broncos?
You can include the Broncos if you want. They're 1-3.
Good Lord.
Eagles 1-3. Yeah, I'm just saying it's crazy. All right, got a battle of 2 NFC teams on Thursday night. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll discuss the hot matchup between the Commanders and the Bears. Next.
Over a decade of her reign concludes to an icon on and off the field. We thank you, Megan.
So we do a lot of. Look, I love football. I love all football games, and I am pumped to see Justin Fields against the Commanders defense. So we mentioned you look at the Bears are 0-4, and the Commanders fell to 2-2. But I mean, there's still the Bears. I mean, Justin Fields played awesome against Denver's defense for the first stretch, and then just fell apart. Denver completes that comeback. How do you guys look at this game? What do you see in terms of the quarterbacks here, Brady? From whether it's Sam Howell and how he's playing for Washington and Justin Fields in Chicago.
Look, you make the case both teams should have won last week, right? I mean, they both blew leads, and it was nice to see Sam Howell bounce back. Obviously, a divisional opponent, but he's playing well this year. You got to give him a lot of credit. That entire offense, Eric Bieniemy's done a phenomenal job with them. So I feel a lot more bullish on where Washington's at right now than I do Chicago. I mean, everyone's blistered the Denver Broncos defense. And so I think it's just a bad matchup for Chicago. You know, that offensive line versus that defensive front for Washington, it could be a long night for Justin Fields. And I'm not really optimistic about the potential of them slowing down Washington. Jalen Johnson's out. Eddie Jackson's out. We already know about the Chase Claypool situation. So it doesn't seem like it's an uphill battle for them, or it feels like it's an uphill battle for Chicago. So I would lay the 5.5 points, man. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game, too. The under is probably the play.
Yeah, and if you look at it, out of the last 7 meetings, the Commanders have won 6 of them, right? Including last year on a Thursday night football game. The interesting thing about this, right, if you look at these two quarterbacks, right, they're both tops in the league, or 2 of the top 3 quarterbacks in regards to being sacked. Sam Howell's the number 1 quarterback in the league in being sacked. And a lot of that has to do with that Buffalo game. He got blitzkrieged in that game. Yeah. But he's been sacked 24 times, which is ridiculous. So you would think maybe that benefits Chicago, but they can't get to the passer, right? They only have 2 sacks in the entire year so far. They're last in the NFL in regards to sacks. So I'm like you. Washington's offense has looked amazing at times. Now, this Washington Commanders defense, right, it's supposed to be led by its defense, but it's kind of been a culture shift. If you look at it, like the defensive line does get after you, but they give up a lot of yardage and a lot of points these last few weeks. I mean, even Denver cooked them. They had to come back in that game, right? The Arizona Cardinals cooked that defense. They had to come back in that game. I mean, Sam Howell also had a bad fumble early in that game versus the Arizona Cardinals. But I just like what you talked about. Like Sam Howell, I always like to look at a young player and see when they go through some adversity, how they bounce back. And he was magnificent last week. I mean, the calmness on that last drive, right? 3rd and 19 to be able to get 17 yards on that. And then on, 4th down, be able to use his mobility, get out of the pocket, find Jahan Dotson for a first down, and then find him later with 1 second on the clock to send that game in overtime. Should they have gone for 2, Brady?
I mean, I always like you winning the game when you have the opportunity to win the game. So, yes.
You heard Rivera's response. He was like, I think my offense was tired. I was like, you don't think the Eagles' defense was tired?
Yeah, exactly, dude. It's like you're at home. You got the
one thing is, how do you get the nickname Riverboat Ron unless you take chances?
Unless you're gambling. They literally were probably half an inch away from winning that game. Terry McLaurin catches that on 3rd down. If his shoe isn't just a little bit bigger, they get the first down. They probably kick a field goal and win that game anyway. But
the Riverboat Ron thing was kind of one. By the way, just worth noting. Daniel Jones actually leapfrogged Justin Fields on Monday when he got sacked 10 times.
Number 2 and Fields is number 3.
Okay, I didn't know if you said 2, top 2, but yes.
I said 2 in the top 3.
Yeah, okay, my bad. I misheard that. Howell 24, DJ 22, and Fields 17, Ritter at 16. I mean, like all these quarterbacks are under fire. They hold the ball a little too long, but also, getting lots of pressure. Riverboat Ron, I mean, he got that in, so it was 2013, and he was about to be fired, and he lost to EJ Manuel and the Bills with Cam Newton, and people were like furious at him for not going for it. So he's like, okay, screw it. I'm going to get fired. I'm just going to start going for it. He did that for like 6 months and then stopped. But the Riverboat Ron thing caught on, and he and his wife were like selling T-shirts to raise money for charity. And so everybody kept calling him that. But he was like, it's not Riverboat Ron. It's really more like analytical Ron. And he did it for like, I know he said that he did it for like 6 months, and he just completely gave up and really hasn't been that aggressive in a long time. So it's like
he should have went for it then, right then.
Yeah,
technically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about winning, as far as the expected outcome. So, yeah.
So, Deuce, the Bears have given up 38 points to the Packers, 27 to the Buccaneers, 41 to the Chiefs, and 31 to the Denver Broncos. Can they stop the Commanders from scoring? Oh, my goodness. This is the most consecutive games allowing 25-plus points in NFL history.
Johnson and Jackson are out in the secondary. They struggle getting after the passer. Again, only 2 sacks in the entire year so far. So this bodes well for Sam Howell and the Commanders. Like, they've struggled protecting the quarterback. But again, nobody fears you except for maybe Ngakoue on that side. So you're not really worried about their defensive line creating havoc this game. I mean, the Eagles got after Sam Howell a little bit last week, but for most of that game, he was cool, calm, and collective in that pocket. Yeah. He knew exactly where to go with the football. I think Sam Howell has a ridiculous game this week. And I think also the Bears have had some misfits, even though they paid 2 highly paid linebackers. They've had some misfits as far as run defense as well, too. I mean, Jaleel McLaughlin had a field day with them last week. And we know Eric Bieniemy coming from Kansas City, they love the screen game with the running backs. That's where McLaughlin had a lot of success. I think Antonio Gibson's going to get some screens, and he'll break a few versus this Bears defense.
Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel both already announced that they will be active for this game. All right, so let's get out of here. You guys both think, Brady, you already said you're going to lay the points for the Commanders?
Lay
I
the
would
points.
too.
So 5.5 now, I think.
I think it was 4.5, so you were able to get it earlier.
It is, it's. You would rather lay the 4.5 than the 5.5. That's for sure. Let me just I'll double check for you. Looking at FanDuel right now, it is 5.5 with a total of 44.5.
Ooh,
what's that?
Thursday night has been low scoring games though.
Under, yeah.
Under,
Low scoring, but also like I don't know how much Chicago will score, and obviously I think Washington will score.
It's in Washington, right?
Yeah,
it is in Washington. How much? And that crowd's been pretty good so far this year. Like I mean, with
A lot of excitement there,
I'm
man.
kind of hoping they bring back RFK, but that's just me. You know,
They're a sneaky team for me in the NFC to make the playoffs.
Ooh, a sneaky.
I told everybody in the beginning of the year the Giants were going to regress. I think their schedule was ridiculous.
Really tough, yeah.
Them and the Jets probably, I think, had the two hardest schedules coming out in the first 6 games. But then if you look at it, like they didn't, I mean, they added Darren Waller, right? But
drafted Hyatt.
Yeah, you think health is a concern with him. I don't think they truly got a number one guy on the outside to really help Daniel Jones. And with Saquon Barkley being out, like I knew it was going to be a tough task. Plus the O-line issues. Yeah, I knew it was going to be tough for them.
All right. I'm going to take the Bears with the points, but I don't feel good about it at all.
Ooh,
love
really?
it. You do it, Will. You do it. Fade us, brother.
I love it.
Fade us. Unlike your hair that hasn't seen a fade in God knows how long.
I don't do a fade, man. I don't shave the
Keep it all moppy, bro. Just like throw the head to the wind. Throw it in like the wind.
Yeah, do it like this.
Yeah, it is. You look like an emo lead singer of a band right now.
Speaking of emo, did you see Jimmy Butler at Media Day?
Yeah. I might try and do the Jimmy Butler like that, like just do full volume.
Oh god, you got to get the piercing on that eyelid. You know,
I can't do it. Can't do a piercing, man. I don't do piercing. All right, for Brady, for Dudes, I'm Brinson. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you tomorrow for the Pick Show. As always, hit the like button on YouTube, subscribe, and don't forget to give us a 5-star rating wherever you get your podcast. See ya.